And as usual, the recording will be published on the Siebel Hub YouTube channel, where you can invite your friends or rewatch it if you miss anything. So we have an action-packed agenda for today. Of course, there's exciting news about the latest Siebel update, 22.7, as you can see on your screen right now. So we're going to start with that. And got some notes here. Then, well, special guest Christian from curexus will tell us about, well, Siebel Email Integration 2022. That's my working title. And, well, stay tuned for that. Keep your ears pricked. A little bit of anniversary we have these days. IP17 is 5 years old.
Crazy.
Or new, crazy, yes. So yeah, a little bit of history, and also checking the future of Siebel, maybe the next 5 years, if we can make that work. And of course, time for GSG, General Siebel Gossip. So whatever you have to tell us about your recent endeavors with Siebel CRM, please feel free to shout out. Use your microphones, use the chat. It's an interactive live session. All right, so 22.7 came out mid-July, right smack 15th of July, so that's almost 2 weeks ago. And maybe some of you have played around with it or got your feet wet. And the biggest news, of course, is there's a new Workspace enabled area, and that's in the repository. That's the whole task UI, artifacts, task themselves and related stuff, including a task editor in Web Tools. And there's an effective dates feature for loyalty points. Just pulled that from the new features, can't tell much about that. And some improvements on the flowchart editor in Web Tools, and we get a new Tomcat 9063. So Tomcat is regularly updated, so every 2 or 3 updates, I guess. That is a good pattern, of course, for security, etc. Workspace enablement for task UI is the big story for 22.7 and later. Of course, if you update to 22.9 in September from something earlier, you get this workspace enablement too. It includes all tasks, tasks themselves and related objects like task groups. They're now managed by workspaces, we know how it works, like applets, business components, or workflow processes since 20.7. So 2 years ago, workflow processes got the treatment, and now it's task time. So you have everything that workflow can do, you can now do for tasks, parallel development, inspect the workspace in the application to test your changes before delivering, and activation of tasks is now completely driven by a single flag, the inactive flag on the design repository object definition. Very much like workflow, or actually exactly like workflow. So there's no surprises there. We have the workspace ID column in several tables related to task. We have a new RR table, unsurprising. And so that's similar to the workflows again. And also similar fashion, the post-install database update, mandatory to run, of course, after every update, once per environment, manages the whole conversion/migration, and also supports the cross-version migration. So you can keep your development environment on a current release like 22.7, take advantage of the task UI improvements, and still have your RR test and production environments on a lower version. And the cross-version migration will manage similar to the workflow situation. So that's documented. And last piece on this slide, there's a new task monitoring configuration view like we have for workflows, workflow monitoring configurations at the log level. And if I'm not mistaken, that's completely new to set a log level for or monitoring level for tasks and have task instances monitored, but could be mistaken on that. Yeah, it's not my strongest leg, task UI, but definitely exciting news for people who work with task UI. There are a lot of big projects that rely heavily on task UI, so I guess they're getting pretty excited about that. And that comes with a task editor in Web Tools. Again, that's very similar to the workflow process experience. Without the simulator, there has never been a task simulator in neither Siebel Tools or wherever. So there's just the editor, but it works like, well, the web editor that we know.
Alex, this is Kerry. There's
Yeah.
a task. The tasks can be simulated in the client.
Right, as ever since. So you have to run it in the
web
client.
tools, right?
Right.
Yep.
There has never been a simulator. Just pointing out that for workflow you have an editor and simulator.
Yeah.
But for task, of course, there's no simulator. There has never been one.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah. And yeah, Kerry, I think we had the discussion last time, or the one episode before. We talked about the multi-value property window in the flow editor becoming resizable or vertically,
right.
at least, not dockable or something, but vertically. And that happens now with 22.7 in both the workflow editor / simulator and task editor. So you can resize basically the multi-value property window, and that of course resizes the stuff on top of it, the canvas. So to make room for bigger, more chunkier workflow to view it all, for example. So that's of course very welcome addition. Good to see that being added. So well, that's the biggest news about 22.7, the introduction of workspace enablement for tasks and related objects. And I found it worthwhile to have a little bit of a fact-finding mission stare down, very friendly stare down between Siebel Tools and Web Tools. So the traditional Siebel Tools and Web Tools, and of course Web Tools has gained a lot in the last 2 years, yeah, more or less. So you see a lot of green with Web Tools. That it depends on the version you're on, but in modern versions of Web Tools, you have a script editor and debugger in the comfort of your browser. You don't need to launch Siebel Tools nor develop a web client. The applet view layout editor, well, as we know, has been removed from Siebel Tools, moved to Web Tools, but it's not completely up to par. It gets an amber color. It's just limited. Web template editor, well, completely new in Web Tools since the beginning. Workflow process editor simulator parity reached in 21.4. Task editor just now. The format toolbar, that's kind of a pain point in old IP16 earlier. There was a nice formatting feature for grid layout, multi-select and align left, align right, make same size. That's not available in either Siebel Tools, Web Tools, but time will tell. And somebody's typing. Can you mute, please? Sorry. Just for the sake of audio quality. Object wizards is another area where we see Siebel Tools has all of the wizards. Web Tools just one of them at the moment, the web service importer. The properties window works in Siebel Tools in the list editor and graphical, and Web Tools only graphical. And Web Tools gets another point for having a view preview feature. The live view preview that you can enable with a user property as is a browser feature only. So Web Tools has quite a good standing, I would say, and it's quite in a good way. And I made a list, not malicious, not a malicious intention, but I made a list of things that I found in Siebel Tools. They exist in Siebel Tools, but there's no trace in Web Tools as of today. So that's just fact finding, and yeah, I discussed this list with Brian by email, and maybe, just maybe, we might see some of these things, just pure speculation, might see some of these things in future versions of Web Tools. So I'm not going into the complete list, but of course, everybody's stalling is the what was it? Entity relationship diagram editor. just kidding. Like, most people will not even probably know what that is. But I just love the F1 help, or well, the bookmarks. Yeah, give me a little bit of maybe. Let's do a word wrap. Quick. Go around the horn in the chat. Maybe type in the chat what's your favorite feature in Siebel Tools that you would like to see in Web Tools next version. What would be that? Nick comes with object comparison. Yeah, that's a big one. It would be so cool to have it in a browser. Well, Christian says compare objects too. Yeah. Jon says better web layout editor. Yeah, please. Bookmarks, says Nick. Duncan says live view of application changes as you make them in tools. Okay, Duncan. Especially on grid. Table definitions. Yeah, working with schema related objects. Say Stefan. Okay, quite a challenge here. And again, this is not malicious intention of mine. It's just listing things that are currently unavailable in Web Tools. And
These are just so you guys know, all of these are on the roadmap. The tables are going to probably have to be last because we have to workspace enable all these other things before we can get to the tables, which is an enormous task.
I can guess.
So we're leaving that for last.
Okay, so Kerry, that's great news. That's really everything in that list is on the roadmap to make it into
yes,
Web Tools,
except for something I have never seen before, which is a bookmark for Workspace, which is a really good idea.
Bookmarks are actually, to me, it has always been like predefined queries. It's just Siebel Tools style.
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. So, and I had a discussion with Duncan a while ago, where we said, well, predefined queries couldn't be too difficult to just maybe add the drop down into Web Tools, like in the application, because it's like a Siebel application thing to save a query, right? And that would be the equally okay thing to have. Doesn't need to be exactly like bookmarks, but.
Hey Nick, what do you mean by full compressing workflows?
Oh yeah, Nick has that in the chat.
Which one again?
Full compressing workflows. What is that?
In in your chat message you typed ability.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what I typed.
Some autocomplete or
Maybe you had two thoughts at the same time.
I must have.
okay, but okay, so strike that. Yeah. Okay, and some other, just reading the chat messages here, which come
Oh,
in
I know
really
what
nice.
it is. There, when you, with the way the workspaces work, and you're in a workspace, I want to be able, when I promote it, to get rid of all that inactive crap when I promote it to the integration workspace. So when they do the merge between the integration workspace and the development workspace, anything I have inactivated, I want it to go away because it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Ah,
That's what I mean by compress.
okay. Oh.
I mean, I understand why they're there, but they need to go away when you start promoting them. So I have a bunch of, it's like having comments in the program. They never ever go away. They take up space and you sometimes are, yeah, the inactive stuff needs to go away.
Yeah. In the design, you mean in the design repository, you have like an option
Yeah.
to delete inactive stuff.
Well, no. Oh, yeah.
Just filter them out.
Yeah. I don't know if filtering them out's the right way to do it, because if I've done a whole bunch of stuff in dev and I've promoted to integration several times and I've inactivated it. I mean, we ran across this in this project we're working on. We must have worked on workflows and promoted integration workspace hundreds of times. So I got all this extra testing stuff that didn't work that I can't get rid of, and it just fills up space, makes it confusing to look at. I want to see in main, I only want to see what's there. I don't want to see all that inactive stuff. And I don't want it to cause me issues when I try to type in a name and it's already there, but it's inactive. Now I got to figure out which one it is, go find out how to fix it, how to reactivate it and use it. So it's a real time consuming effort when you're doing as much integration workspaces that we've been doing.
Okay, so just to see if I understand, let's say that in main you have an inactive workflow process called one, and you're down in one of your development workspaces and you don't know about one, and you create a workflow called one, and you get an error message when you're trying to deliver saying you have to rebase or something, and you have to go see what on earth are they talking about. Oh, there's an inactive one in main. Is that
No, it's not the workflow itself. It's all the objects inside the workflow.
The child elements, child object.
So like the properties, the steps, the connectors, all
Okay,
those
so you've
things that we
inactivated a
inactivate and
step.
reactivate, they cause issues if you deliver it to integration and create a new dev workspace and want to call a name to it.
I don't think this is specific to workflows. Like it also happens like on applets too, like when you're moving around the controls.
Everything. I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Main should be clean. It should not have any inactive stuff on it whatsoever.
Okay, good point.
Let me take a note of that.
I mean, before we could just delete it and we'd have a nice clean business component, you know, unnecessary joins are removed. But in this workspace now, if I create a join and promote it and then come back and activate it, it's still there. So now I got But main should be clean. I mean, maybe integration workspace is okay to have it. I mean, I don't see a problem there. But when I promote into work to the main, it should be nothing but active stuff.
Okay.
Part of the problem is that
not
you don't
necessarily
know
the components, you know, not necessarily like the workflow itself or a business component, but all the objects that build that business component.
Part of the issue is you don't really know if you set something inactive for a specific reason, like, you know, but you wanted to keep it there, or if it was made inactive just because it's from a previous workspace.
Okay, quite the discussion here. Good. I have one suggestion. So Carrie, I know you're taking notes, but I'll save the chat transcript for this session and send it to you.
Yeah.
Because there's so many valuable things in the chat right now. So, well, I didn't really know that this would kick off this big discussion. Okay, good.
No, this is very useful. And so perhaps we can, as the weeks go on, and we're successful, check off things on this list that people want.
Okay, I'll make this a regular slide and we check it off. Again, it's no pressure and whatever. So, what
Well, all of these things are exactly what my job is. So your input is extremely valuable.
Okay, good to hear. And we'll keep providing that. Okay, so there will be follow-up on that for sure in the next months. And I got one more slide to maybe open a discussion here or provide or pour in some chat messages if you want. I extended my search a little bit for artifacts that have no workspace support as of now. That is, of course, like Carrie said, the big chunk, all the schema-related stuff. That, of course, starts with tables and the columns and indexes, but also includes EIM, interface table definitions, workflow policy stuff, assignment stuff, docking objects. Not docking objects, probably the most rare these days. But everything that relates to schema is not workspace enabled right now, including the OpenUI manifest. So there are basically two, and that's surprising. There's just two areas left in the repository, if I'm not mistaken. Outside of the repository, yeah, Carrie?
The OpenUI manifest files and the administrative data, those are being worked on right now.
Okay, OpenUI manifest data, you mean, not
yeah, and things like data maps and stuff that you enter in the UI. We're working on those right now.
That's on the blue on the right side. There's the non-repository stuff like except list of values, of course. That's the only workspace enabled application data. I think that's the official term. No?
Yes.
And of course, there's lots of administrative data. It would take an hour to enumerate all of them. EI data maps, application data maps, what have you. And good to hear it's being worked on. Then I listed web artifacts, basically file stuff that resides on the web server. And most people, of course, want to have some version control, workspace control on the JavaScript they write for OpenUI, the CSS, style sheets, images. And also recently I worked on a project with heavy use of custom Java. That of course goes on not on the web server, it goes on the internal Tomcat. So you have your jar files there. Not sure how to handle that with Workspaces, but it's not handled by Workspaces, obviously. And there's other file-based stuff that you have in Siebel, like EIM, IFB files, the odd CFG file, the properties file you put on mostly for Java related or Tomcat related, or the whole enterprise configuration. That's everything that's in Zookeeper. So there's no version control on that too, no? So that, at least not in the classic architecture.
Just to give a little insight there, I think the way that we imagine that happening in a containerized world for content that is outside of the database is that it will probably be handled with change management, something like GitLab. So I think the idea is that your version of the Siebel application will be a container, but it will be customized and you will have multiple releases of it, and that container will be specific to you, the customer, and your internal release, as well as obviously being in some way dovetailed with our release. So your production container would be whatever version of Siebel you're running. The repository is the repository in the database, but all these other files would sit in something like GitLab. And so when you make changes to them in GitLab, there's potential there for an automatic CI/CD process to roll out a new shape of your container with everything already built into it.
Well, very much like it's already done with the Cloud Manager architecture with YAML and GitLab. And I think the latest Cloud Manager even has some support for the web artifacts in GitLab.
It does, yeah. I mean, but that extends beyond that, you see. So that system has been made quite generic. So it doesn't just apply to web artifacts, actually applies to every potential file and folder within the Siebel file system.
Sure.
Whether it's a Java file, a Java class file, or anything else you might have in there, XSL files, etc. There's a whole host of things which, as you say, if you try and enumerate them all, it takes forever. And so, rather than having that, you've just got the notion of a generic versionable shape for your container.
Like you open the folder in Git, some Git tool, and you modify a file, and it's committed and reconciled. Do you say reconciled?
Well, rolled out essentially. Yeah.
Well, that's cool to hear. So there's some thought on that. Again, I just want to kind of solicit input your ideas in the chat or orally as you give it down. Thanks, Duncan, very much. So these just some thoughts about as 22.7 is available with those workspace changes. Why not look at the status quo and the future? And looking into final slide, by the way, for my presentation, looking into the future of Siebel, or the present, but the future for many environments. Cloud Manager just got generally available a few days ago. If I couldn't make out the exact date, but there's a blog article on the Oracle Siebel CRM blog, noting that it's GA, so it's available on the OCI marketplace for everybody. You can correct me if I'm wrong. So that's the information I got from the blog article. We talked about Cloud Manager in Siebel Fridays a lot already, so I'm not going into too much detail. The current version 22.7 is out, I've seen. And there's also in the blog article, let me see if I find it. Give me a moment. Have it open here. Yeah, that's the blog article just released a few days ago on the Siebel CRM blog by Shia Mohandas. And there's a link to a workshop, actually a live lab workshop, which just looked into the other day. And that's a step-by-step tutorial style thing of, doing all the necessary steps to install SCM and GitLab, and then run a deployment. It's a greenfield deployment. I notice it's on 22.4, so slightly different from the latest version, but for a first glimpse into what's necessary to use it, I think it's very valuable, and it's on the public internet. So public information there from Oracle in a nice format, worth knowing, and that's what Siebel Friday is for. You stay on top of the scene with your Siebel knowledge. Okay, so that's the news for 22.7. Thanks for the very lively discussion on the feature set of web tools and the workspaces. There will be follow-up on that. So now I would like to hand over to Christian from curexus.
Thank you.
Okay, Christian, you're on.
I'm here.
You can share.
just share my cam and I will switch it off later. Just you can see me.
Okay.
So that's me.
Hello.
I'm from curexus. I will bring something with SSSE. So it's not email integration, it's exchange integration. So your introduction was a little bit misleading in the general agenda. But we have news on this part with the email response for 22.8. Integration for Exchange Online. So if this is important for the community for 22.8, it's planned to have the OAuth access to Exchange Office Online.
Mm-hmm.
So I will share my screen and switch off the cam. Searching for the right screen. So I want to tell you something about SSSE and a little bit from curexus. So I'm from curexus, situated in Germany, and I'm doing Siebel since 20 years now. Some of my development scripts are still running at some customers. And so this is the Königsspitze in the Alps. I just will say why. So this is our name, curexus, and it's kind of, in German you say Kofferwort. It's a customer relationship, and Königsspitze is Rex. So this is the sign, our logo is the Königsspitze in the Alps. So, and this is where we come from and where we are going to. We are just specialized on CRM. Not only Siebel, there are some other CRMs that we know very well. And that's what we are doing. And one more slide to curexus. We are thinking if we are doing a CRM project, so not only just do some customizing, or I think 5 dimensions are very important. You have to talk about culture, strategy, processes, data, and at the end, often about the system. So in the Siebel Friday, we are very talking about systems, which is quite good, I think, and very interesting. So let's come to the structure for today. I will have some slides for SSSE. What is it? Talking about the architecture and some summary. I will not drill down in heavyweight detailed use cases. There's much more, but I will try to keep it understandable. So this is my picture of SSSE at the end. So what is it? On the one hand, you have Siebel. You see it in here in the background, and you have some calendar entries in Siebel. And those calendar to-do types are synchronized to Exchange. So you can have it in your native Outlook. You can have it in your Outlook web access. You can have it in Teams. It also has a calendar. And at the end, if you have an iPhone which is connected to your company Exchange, you have the date on your iPhone. So it's very easy to integrate, especially with a mobile aspect. You have a server-side synchronization. You don't have to deal with client software. You don't have to distribute something for Outlook or whatever. And I think this is very, very easy at the end for the run of this part. So we will talk about synchronization for calendar entries and contacts and to-dos for the next minutes. So this is my rough building block architecture. You have the to-dos in Siebel, the calendar entries, the contacts. You have the Siebel server. In the Siebel server, there's this component called PIMC engine. And this is talking to the Exchange server for Exchange on-prem and Exchange online, not mobile, Exchange online. So Office 365 Exchange online. And at the end, it doesn't matter with which client you're communicating to the Exchange server. So let's go into some demo. We have the use case 1. It's my calendar synchronization. So SSSE can synchronize data stored in the Siebel My Calendar. Appointment goes to Exchange and vice versa. I will show this. So I have my Firefox open in here, and what we have is our Siebel demo system. And I will go to the calendar. So I'm connected as admin, like, well, everyone does this for analysis. So I will make a new event. Buy some ice cream for the kids. Hope this works in this view. Let's drill inside here and say it's in the home office. We have an appointment. I think the time frame is okay, duration is okay. And let's have some participants. And let's choose who we choose. I think Pet Penguin would be I think Pet Penguin would be fine. No, let's take Arnold. I think this one is better. So, and I will save this. And our job is synchronizing every 2 minutes. We are talking to Exchange. So at the end, this appointment will show up here. So this is my Outlook web access for our testing. So we have built up a domain with Microsoft, and we will have just for testing. And if I go in here, buy some ice cream for the kids, we have the appointment in here. And we see that Ted Arnold is also included in here. And this is an interesting thing. So the category, so this is the Outlook category, it is set to appointment. So it comes later to to-do types and things like that. You can force this to use these categories. And that's the first part. And if I build up a kids want pizza and another one, so I can, this is interesting. So let's introduce Ted Arnold, and we can see, and this is going appointment created in Outlook Web Access. Description. What else do we need? We make or 1 day. Yeah, it doesn't matter. So we can save this. And then we will see this in our Siebel calendar again when synchronization is done. So we will wait and go back to the slides, see the next use case, and then we will come back to see this calendar entry running vice versa. So this is the first part, calendar synchronization. And there is some special feature. So if you use the private flags in Outlook Web Access and Siebel, so both have this private flag, it works. So then the appointment stays there. And Brian Kelly, we had a call last week, he told me they have implemented a special feature where you just can also see the private to see if there is if there's some free time. I haven't tried out this feature. It would be interesting to see how it works. So that's roughly the calendar synchronization. And if there is a contact added in the calendar which is not there, then Siebel is synchronizing the personal data as well. So, and this is what is the documentation. So these are the display fields, drives, where the SSSE is putting the entity to. So if you have calendar and activities, it goes to calendar. If you have to do and activities, it goes to tasks. And activities only or communications and activities are not synchronized. So I will show what I'm talking about. So if you go say, we'll choose Ted Arnold. I think you know what I mean. If I go here, display in these drives where it's synchronized, to-do type or calendar entry. So this is the first use case, and the next use case, I think, is the synchronization of contacts. I think this is quite interesting. So we can add a contact in here. Let's add Casey Cheng. Some of the old Siebel guys know Casey Cheng. Call center service agent, I think, on the let's put in some account here. Maybe she's working for German chemistry. Let's put in some address. So, and now I can say in the menu, so it's saved. And if I want to synchronize this contact to the exchange, I will just say add to sync list. And now the PIMSy engine knows this contact has to be synchronized for the user as admin. I think it's clearly understandable. And what happens technically in the more info applet, you can see the sync list. So you have a sync flag in the sync list, and it's an MVG, and then you can see all the users that have added Casey Cheng to their sync list. And I think this is good. This is not very magic. You can see it and you can manage it. And if an employee leaves the company or whatever, you can do some analysis and put it to the right shape again. So if I go to my Outlook Web Access again and look on where is it, Outlook? In here, there should be the context somewhere. And we see Casey Cheng from BASF now in here. Maybe it's another one. Yes, it's there. We have a BASF Ludwigshafen from the company, and we have the private address that I added, which is my office address. And yes, that's mainly this one. And if I delete this contact again in the Outlook Web Access, then it's removed from the sync list. So that's the way Siebel works with deletion of contacts in the system. So I will do this. And if everything works fine at the end, Casey Cheng should have a clean sync list at the end. We'll see when it's there. Still there. Okay. Just yeah. I will go to the next use case and come back in a couple of minutes to see what has happened. So, any questions so far? Yes, that's Alex. This would be the next comment, right? Okay, so let's go to the next slide. There you have the add to sync list, remove from sync list, so you have a full control available. So if you want to clean up something, you can just remove all contacts from a special sync list. And the last use case is the to-dos, task synchronization. So if you have some tasks, they are also synchronized. I can show again. I think I would start in here now. No, I will go to this one. Let's do a task for Casey. So if I do an appointment in here, then it will create an appointment in the calendar view. So if I say 30 minutes, where's the description? Here. Buy some ice cream for Casey. This is wrong. This is meet Casey. So then normal Siebel style of doing it. And if I put in another one and I say, okay, you have to do in here. So then Siebel is putting in the display in type to do and activities. I've shown this some minutes ago. And I think I can just say buy ice cream again. And I will save this. And at the end, when synchronization is done, we should see it somewhere in here. Or this is, I think the to-do is in the Outlook Web Access. It's not very far. It's still on the way from Microsoft, but we will see it at the end. So which one did I create it? Test for Siebel Friday. You see, we have done some tests today. And also you can see here in the category, we did this today. So there we transferred an alert activity and the to-do type was set to alert. So let's have a look in here. Let's just wait a couple of seconds and come back later. So, and that's at the end is SSSE. And on the next slide, yeah, priority will also be changed. And on the next slide, for the technical guys, this is the more interesting thing, the architecture. We have the Siebel Enterprise. We have the Tomcat running with the Siebel server. You all know this. And there is a component. It's called PIMSy Dispatcher. And the main job is done by the PIMSy engine, which is doing some. Hi, Rajesh. Hi, Christian. If we delete contact or activities in Siebel, will it remove in Outlook? You can. The short answer is yes, and the longer answer is you can configure it. So you can configure which is the master.
Yeah. Okay. I was just thinking on the GDPR perspective, because we're not supposed to store the data when we cleanse, and after a certain period, if you're cleansing the data of the customer, just to make sure that the individual's Outlook, because the data will be already there with all the data, personal data. So I'm just thinking how that will be taken care of, because even for the appointment also, the emails of the customer is also mapped there.
Yes. So for the SSSE, it's not synchronizing emails. So this is a little bit misleading, because it's synchronizing activities and things like that. And you can think, oh, emails,
yeah, I mean,
every
activity with
is
the
there.
personal email ID.
Yes, yeah, that's yes. The email address, yeah, but not the email rows. Okay. So let's come back to the architecture. So I think this is for a Siebel expert relatively clear. So you have to activate your components, and then you have an interface in the Exchange tenant. It's called WebRP. It's a bunch of web services from Microsoft to steer Exchange, and the arrow is a little bit misleading. So data is running vice versa, but in Exchange there is no job. So the PIMSy engine will pull everything from Exchange. You don't have to activate some jobs or plugins or things like that on Exchange. There's no footprint from Siebel in the Exchange. Everything is fetched from the PIMSy engine. And if we go a step deeper from the flow, how it works, you have the PIMSy dispatcher, which is at the end a bunch of triggers which are collecting some tasks for the PIMSy engine. In case the dispatcher starts the PIMSy engine, but also you loop the PIMSy engine, and the PIMSy engine is doing all the transformation that is done. So there are some integration objects running. It's not using an EAI object manager. It's all built in the PIMSy engine. And for the Exchange Online, you have this thing. It's called WebRP OAuth 2, where the synchronization is done. So this is mainly the flow. If you add the contact in the Siebel, how we done it, then this is the flow over the WebRP to the Exchange. So if you activate everything, then at the end you will have some PIMSy component group with your two processes that you need. That's from the runtime aspect. What you need when you try to integrate Exchange Online, you need your Office 365 URL, so your own tenant, your own ID for the Azure portal, the OAuth endpoint, some Office thumbprint, and the Office private key file. And if you have everything, then you can register your application in the Exchange Online. So in here, there are the IDs and the footprints. I had to clean it, but at the end, yes, that's the way. So you go to your Exchange Online, you get this ID, and then you put these IDs in the Siebel Office key. So there are the configuration parameters in Siebel, I can show this. So everything is done in this PIM server integration. And there are some configuration. There are these Exchange web services, and here everything is done in here. So here you see the keys and the footprints and everything else. And here you can also see then, let's stay here. At the end, you can see the user map. So we activated it for the as admin. So this is the Siebel user login, and then you map the Exchange user login in here. And then you can control the user access level, full sync, export only, none, visibility type. So you have a lot of controls in here. I think on the next slide I have this. No, come. So user map and synchronization options. Here you can set what you want. So synchronization level full sync, export only, import only. Changes made to calendar records in Microsoft Exchange Server are imported to Siebel business applications. Or you can say none. And here I've shown this right on the system. And at the end, that's it. So you have no passwords in here. If you go to the architecture from a security perspective, everything is done with the certificates and the public-private keys in here. So coming to the summary, what is SSSE? Integration of Siebel with Exchange, on-prem and 365 online on server side. You can synchronize calendar activities, so the to-do list, contacts. Mail cannot be synced. You can customize it with narrow limits. So what you can see in here is you have some Siebel domains, and if you look on this looks strong like an integration object. So if you have some personal fields and you want to add some personal fields, you have to go in here and do some data mapping. So you can add something. You have a list of value transformation map. You have a PIM list of value transformation. So you can adapt some things, but you cannot fully expand new objects or things like that. So if you need other entities or so, SSSE is not the right thing. So we tried out to keep running another field. This is working. Yes. So I think at the end, if you can configure it here, then it's customizable, and what you cannot achieve here, this is not possible. So this is meant with customizable within narrow limits. There's also an Outlook add-in available, but it also works without. We didn't try it out, the Outlook add-in. It's not dependent on Outlook. Say it also works with mobile, Outlook Web Access, other clients, everything what you can do with Exchange. And that's my presentation. Any more questions, feedback?
Well, yes, wow. So feedback from my side, I'm totally speechless. Thanks, Christian, for this great presentation. very valuable. And sorry for the misleading introduction. It's of course Exchange integration in 2022, not email. Okay, yeah, please give Christian a virtual hand, make some noise in the chat for this great presentation. Christian, you mentioned you have some other topics as well, or is this?
So I think it's we have for the evaluation we have evaluated the CRM desktop. We compared it. I think this is too much for one Siebel Friday.
Okay, this is too much
Talking
for one.
About so for CRM desktop itself, you can talk 4 hours.
Yeah, it's just one question, maybe just to wrap it up. If I want to integrate email with Siebel CRM with, let's say, Exchange or Office 365, what options do I have?
I think at the end you have email response. CRM desktop is possible. You have this add-in.
The Outlook add-in, yeah.
Yeah. The Siebel drag and drop for sure over DISA, but this is more manually, yeah.
Okay, so there's plenty of stuff for more Siebel Fridays to come. Happy for everybody who wants to talk about this more. Yeah, please feel free to reach out to me if you want to have a presentation, present your company, and present cool Siebel stuff. Siebel Friday is an open platform. Okay, thanks again, Christian.
Thank you for the thanks to the audience. I hope it was interesting for you.
Okay,
stop.
Yeah. So let me
share if I can find it.
I will take over the screen. Yeah.
Okay.
And let's see. There we go.
Ah, I found it.
Yeah. So yeah, so we are so that's not email, that's Exchange integration. Okay. We'll make sure it's clear in the description of the video as well. Yeah, the last thing I would like to do is just go back in history 5 years, almost on the day today, was 31st of July. Oracle announced general availability of Siebel Innovation Pack 17.0, and that of course is worth some celebration. We have it was back then it was named on the blog, I can remember, the biggest, boldest, and most innovative release of Siebel since a long time. And let me go back to the Siebel Hub. Well, no need to introduce the Siebel Hub. You're sure all members and you follow the blog and know about all the options we have on the Siebel Hub. But maybe you haven't seen the CRM timeline. So one way of celebrating the history of Siebel is available in the knowledge area, books and media. We have the Siebel CRM timeline. It's an interactive timeline. And would you know that, well, that first very young Tom Siebel back in 1988 kicked off a project at Oracle, which was named Oasis and later became, well, the flagship CRM we have today. So there's a long history of all the eventful years in Siebel and Oracle. And there in 2017, there it is. Innovation Pack 17 was introduced. Of course, introducing a new architecture or a renewed architecture with all the tomcats and zookeepers we love so much. Introducing workspaces, mandatory workspace concept in the repository, introducing web tools. So it was incredible what Oracle delivered back then. And of course, not stopping there, there was the continuous release model introduced in Siebel 18, then 19, Siebel 20. Well, we're on Siebel 22, and we're talking about Cloud Manager and YAML and GitLab. So the future definitely holds something there, as also mentioned by George Jacob on Monday in the Customer Connect session, which many of you sure watched, or make sure to watch the replay, where George Jacob confirmed, reconfirmed all over again, repeating himself. Oracle is doing a great job of repeating themselves all over that Siebel is not going away. Siebel still supported. Premier support is now extended to 2033 with a 1-year extension every year. We all know that, but it's worth mentioning. And to celebrate this a little bit more, I put a little poll. I used to put these polls on the Siebel Hub YouTube channel, so they're easily reachable from the public. So let me put the link in the chat so you can reach that page. And I put a poll there that says Siebel CRM IP17 was released 5 years ago. And the poll is about which feature had the biggest impact on your project. So what do you feel was the most important or most impactful change that came with IP17? And if it's not in the list, there's a comment feature. You can tell us all about it. And currently, let me reload this. 23 votes currently there. Maybe we see some votes live from you guys. So 23, of course, is highly unrepresentative of the Siebel customer community, but those 23 votes, 35 or 1/3 of them says the new architecture had the most impact on the project. Not unsurprising. I'm a little bit surprised that more than half of them answered Workspaces had the biggest impact. So most likely developers have to use it. Web tools, migration applications doesn't have the biggest impact on projects. So yeah, please feel free to join in on the poll and cast your vote, or add some comments live in the chat here to what's your statement about IP17 and the past 5 years and maybe the next 5 years of Siebel CRM. Would like to hear that. And on that note, we'll end this Siebel Friday. Of course, still open for a chat, for gossip, for speculations on Siebel, or facts, of course, on Siebel. You're all welcome to, well, use your microphones or the chat and tell us what you think. Okay, so that's it for me. That's it from Christian. Thanks much again to Christian. And I'm told in the chat to reload the poll. So we see 27 votes already. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys. And not much change there. So we definitely have some favorites. All right. Okay. Any comments? Most welcome. Any input for next Siebel Fridays? Most welcome. And as discussed previously, the chat transcript I will send to Kerry from Oracle and follow up with him, and there will be some updates hopefully on some of the next Siebel Fridays. Okay. All right. I'll reload once more, then I'll stop the recording. 28 votes so far. Great. Thanks for your feedback. All right, recording stopping.